And I came to realize I need to have some fun. I need to enjoy what I'm doing. Because even though I was making more money than I had been earning before, I was miserable, so it didn't matter. It just didn't matter. And I got married by this point, and we're starting to think about having a family, but there's all this work uncertainty. And so I just couldn't take that job anymore. And I decided to do something where I could be impactful in the lives of people, and I wanted to get into the healthcare industry because although it's an enormous business enterprise, there's actually a mission that matters. And the mission piece is going to come full circle when we talk about kinetics for me. And so I took a job at an organization that was a social services funded home for severely emotionally disturbed kids. And within this organization, they were building a brand new facility that was way out in the sticks, 45 minutes from my house, no real highway to get there. And it was for kids who had failed out of the state psychiatric hospital system. So if you can think of a more depressing place than a state inpatient psychiatric hospital for children, and they can't function there, that's where they came, to us. And so there's a lot of physical interventions. They had gone through horrific physical and sexual abuse. And I took a job, took a giant cut in pay, didn't care at that point. And I worked literally on the unit where the kids lived. So they'd go to school in this facility during the day, and then they'd come back to the unit. They just walk down a giant hallway to where there were activities, and it's like home, but it was staff that took care of it. So I actually would do split shifts. I'd work from like 7 to 9 in the morning, drive home, and come back when they got done with school, and work 3:30 to like 11. And it was brutal, because the kids were in such horrible shape. And so after and this is also when I started to have a turning point where I was scanning the senior leadership team of this agency, and I thought, I think I want to be the executive director of this agency. There's 50 employees here, that's a big organization. That's what I want to do. So I'm shifting gears, right? Teacher, classroom's too small, shifting to human service agency. So after about a month, a job opened, month and a half, a job opened of a case manager. And clearly with my 4 weeks of experience, as you all will appreciate, I was way overqualified. So I applied for the job, and the clinical director gave me this token interview, like seriously. And I, because of my style, said, look, sometimes you can't rely on experience. You've got to go with passion. You've got to know to go with the person who's going to work hard enough. And I went on and on and on and on. She started laughing. She said, I can't take it. You got the job. So I got the job. And that shifted me to Monday through Friday, more traditional hours, like we have, business type hours. And so I then started going to grad school. Because in the human services world, a master's degree in social work is like an MBA would be considered in the business world. Universally applicable regardless of setting. And almost all the executives that I started researching in the human services world or human service agency world had their master's degree in social work. So that's the ticket for me. And so I got to the first year of grad school, 3-year process, so I was working full-time Monday through Friday. I found a part-time graduate program about an hour away from my house, and that was all day Saturday. So for 3 years, my routine was Sunday night through Thursday night was homework, Monday through Friday was work, all day Saturday was school, an hour and a half away. So a lot of commitment, a lot of stress and strain, totally worth it, worth every painful second. And so in the second year, I started looking around at my wonderful agency, and suddenly it felt too small again. And I thought, this isn't going to work. And I had an opportunity to move to about a 650 employee hospital as their training and development manager. I thought, now I have totally arrived. Right? I had 2 employees that worked for me, both the age of my parents, which was a little weird, right? So I had to visit with my parents, and I visit with my team, and everybody looked exactly the same. So I was totally power suited out every second because I was going to live the role. I was going to be confident whether I had zero confidence on the inside. On the outside, by God, I was going to be confident. And people found some humor in that, but it didn't matter. I was totally convinced that's how it had to be. And so during that time, I'm juggling grad school still, and I'm working at this hospital, but another kind of very impactful series of things happened to me. As part of my graduate experience, I chose to take a clinical concentration versus an administrative one. I was already up to my neck in administrative stuff as the training manager. And so I chose a clinical path because I thought, well, if I really bomb out at this administrative stuff, at least I'll be able to do some clinical work. And so my first year, I worked with a boy in specialized foster care. And so I would do one-on-one sessions with him. And these powerful things happen to you because we end up getting caught up in numbers and the work product and workflow and optics of how things look. And then I'm meeting with this boy, and he chose, because of the trusting relationship we built, to disclose to me before anybody else how a neighbor boy had raped him. And so you're hearing that in the moment, and you start to realize that there's this human connection that is far more important than the policy I have to get done, or the notes I have to do, or the email. I can't remember if we had email back then. I don't think we had email back then. That I would have to deal with. And so it was very profound for me, as you might imagine, hearing that, just because he trusted me, the relationship we built. So I was at the hospital, had a good first year, as a delightful little soul who was a total survivor through all that. Got to my second year at the hospital, and I found that the managers were starting to come to me as the training manager with all their employee relations issues. We had a human resources function, but the managers were all coming to me. And so I started thinking, wow, social work, relationships, communicating with people, dealing with difficult situations, really aligns well to HR. And so there were a couple changes at the hospital. I had an opportunity to take the human resources director position at the hospital. And oddly enough, I walked into class on a Saturday and I said, hey, I'm all excited, I just got this promotion. And the professor, licensed social worker, says, that's great, I just took a VP of HR job in an insurance company. So there was this odd thing about his social work skill set that's not traditional in the world of business that was so applicable in HR. So the final defining moment when I was working at that hospital was as part of my academic journey, was I had that the hospital was small, and so there was a part-time oncology clinic, and they didn't have a social worker. And so they thought, well, this is great, Jay's got to do a year of social work, practical clinical training, so he can be our social worker in the clinic. Which was great because I could be in a meeting, I'd get a call or a page back in those days. They're small, you guys don't know, they're small little devices. We used to actually call people on them and you'd react and get all excited. Now we just say, hey, come see me. So working in that unit was wild because there was no infrastructure. So for us here, we have infrastructure. If we need support, we can go get it. When you're the only one, you're the only one. And so I get these calls, Jay, yeah, the doctor's in with the family now, okay. And he's telling them that the cancer's back and there's nothing we can do. It's totally back this time. This is it. You need to come up, so as soon as he walks out, you can go in. Okay, great. That's great. Thanks for that opportunity. So that was like my life for the year. So you start to get this appreciation of hospitals in a deeper way than being the HR guy. More reinforcement with the patients and the people. And there was a particular patient that I got to work with, I had the opportunity to work with. She had cancer on and off for a long time, didn't have 2 cents to rub together. And her son had been garbage man. And he had been in a horrible accident where he was on the side of the truck, adult son, and a car clipped them and cut off both his legs. And he had gotten a settlement from this horrific accident, as he should have, and he bought her a new trailer so that she could have a clean, modern place to live. So she moves into this place, and about 4 days later loses her sight because the impact of all the drugs and her illness and all this. So you're thinking, what else can happen to this person, right? And so one of the things that, and the sight eventually came back, so that was a good news part of the story. But one of the things that she'd always wanted was to be baptized. And so I'm the son of a United Methodist minister, and one of my father's good friends and one of my good friends was the United Methodist minister in this town that I was working in. And so I asked him if he'd do a favor, which of course he said yes, and he did this special baptism ceremony, which for any of you that have been to basically a Protestant baptism, it's about 4 minutes up in front of the church, right? But he made it like this 20-minute thing. She had all her family come. It was this big, giant, epic thing. So this is like a life-changing thing for her. All I did was call and ask for a favor, but it makes such a big difference, right? So about this time, I finished with school. I was joyful to be done with school. The larger part of the health system that I worked in had an opening. So once again, I don't care about minimum qualifications. This is like swearing in front of all of you. I tell people my first 4 jobs, I didn't get any of the minimum qualifications, so I just went for it. Like, just stop worrying about that. Just push hard, sell yourself, be confident, go, go, go. If they say no, so what? You're in the same spot. So I got the job and got to that large part of the health system. So for me, this early part of my journey was about this whole new level of awareness about how important people are in the work that you do. Not knowing that my leadership role was going to expand as much as it did later on. But if I've got all the spreadsheets perfect, and I've got the memo perfect, and I've got the policy perfect, but I forget the people part, I don't have anything. I don't have one thing. The team around you makes such a huge difference. I've told the groups that I've managed for years that if I'm the smartest person in the room, we're dead. I don't actually ever have to come up with any good ideas. I only need to implement good ideas that the people around me come up with. And that changes the whole nature of the relationship with the ones that you're working with, right? So I was very fortunate to be in that role, and I now started thinking much bigger. So I was in that role a while, very successful. It was pre all the cool tech and gadgets and social that we use now. It's total Cro-Magnon, caveman. I'd like make sketches on the wall, need nurses. It was really bad. So another defining moment, the project manager for the CEO of the hospital I worked at. So now we've gone from 650 people to about 3,000. Had a team of recruiters and support staff, and I spent a huge amount of time on employee relations. Some on, I was responsible for all the recruitment, but it was kind of a well-run machine. The employee relations was wild. So she tapped me on the shoulder one day. She says, "Do you want to be in HR forever, or do you want to get some operations experience?" And I said, "I want to get some operations experience." And so I had an opportunity to manage in a director type role 2 GI labs, a big $10 million outpatient dialysis program, which nowadays would be way more than that just because of how things are so much more expensive, and a diabetes outpatient education program. And so that was really, really exciting. I was in that role for a year. And during that year, to set up that community, there were 2 major healthcare systems, and they hated each other's guts. We spent all our money and resources talking about how the other one was bad and how we were great, and they did the same thing to us. We had 2/3 market share, they had 1/3 market share. And so I'm in this diabetes center role. We were about to sign a contract with an organization called Joslin Diabetes Center, big national chain. They were about to sign a contract with Diabetes Centers of America. We wanted to have branded, flashy, franchisee type stuff. So I had a really, really, really close friend who was a physician on the dark side. And I thought, this is stupid. This is an opportunity to have a breakthrough collaboration between these 2 health systems. We could combine the talent. They had the physician firepower, and their educators were awful. Our physicians were lunatics, but our educators were world class. So this was a perfect no-brainer. There's not a lot of money in it. There's a lot of money in the downstream work, vascular work, things like that, but you could share that. So, and this was very high stakes, so I had to have like secret meetings with him to entertain the idea. Off-site, it's very dramatic. There's music and everything. No, I'm just kidding. There was no music. And so we put together this whole plan. Gigantic learning moment for me. We put together this whole plan. I ran the numbers with our finance team. He ran the numbers. We had the whole thing. I came to get, I pushed it forward to our system CEO, and I'm like ready to announce myself as the second coming of this whole, I'm saving all of healthcare in this community. And he got gunned down in 2 seconds. Not gunned down like come back to us, gunned down like no and never. And so I was very disappointed, as was my friend, the physician from the other side. And the thing I took away from that was, when you're doing your due diligence, make sure you're including the people that are actually going to make the decision in your research, right? So if we want to test something here, we don't keep it a secret from Shannon until we've spent 9 months and $50,000 researching something and then show it to her. And she says, well, no, we can't do this because of this. Oh, we didn't know about that. So my miss was to not have that meeting with the system CEO and say, hey, this thing's starting to take on some energy. Do you think this will actually even fly? And it would have been a no. The political environment between the two organizations was so deplorable that it wouldn't have mattered. We couldn't have painted park benches together down Main Street. Just no way. So one of the questions I now ask in interviews, particularly at the leadership level, is tell me when you've had a fantastic idea that you knew was a no-brainer and it got rejected. So it's a little life experience from me. And if I get an answer that, well, if I'm really passionate about it, I just keep pushing and pushing. Good luck at somewhere else. Because sometimes you just can't get what you want, right? So if you can accept it and move on, that's great. If you're just going to fight and fight and fight and fight, that just means you want to fight all the time. Well, we don't want you to come here if you're going to fight with us. We're a collaborative environment. So that all was very impactful. And about this time, a little bit after that time, my small hospital that I started with, my old boss, a VP, left. And the CEO of that hospital was a tough guy. Tough in like a nasty, mean way. Not like, ooh, he's pretty tough and cool. Like jerk way. I love you, Frank, but you were a jerk. And so he would fire just about everybody. It was just a matter of time. It's like when you're a coach in professional sports. You're like, hey, this is the team that's going to fire me. Like on your first day, that's what you're thinking, right? So no one ever went back to him. So I called him up and I said, Frank, it's Jay. Hey, Jay, how are you? I said, great. I said, I heard Joanne left. He said, yeah, Joanne left. I said, well, I want her job. This was the phone call. You just went right to it with Frank. There's no pleasantries. I said, I want her job. He said, really? I said, yep. He said, you want to come back? I said, yeah, I want to come back in her job. He says, why don't you come up, we'll talk about it. So I went up to see him, we're sitting in his office, and I was very naive at this point, but full of confidence, not really sure where it came from. And so I had just started learning about golden parachutes. Anybody hear this phrase, golden parachute? Like somebody does a horrible job and they have to leave, but they get paid some cash, right? So I thought, I'm going to talk golden parachutes. So I thought I was being all smooth and savvy, and I said to him, hey, Frank, I really don't know about that. I've heard this thing about golden parachutes of executives leaving. He says, oh yeah, this is a direct quote. Oh yeah, if I have to can your ass, I'll pay you a few weeks. Okay, well, I got him on that one, didn't I? I didn't even know what to think. Yeah, I'll give you 6 weeks. Thanks, Frank. So I got the job, and I went back. Giant risk. I knew going back I was going to get fired. Because he fired, I'm not kidding, 100% of his executive team. Not all at once. Whenever it was your turn, you got fired. So I thought, okay, this is my first chance to be in an executive role, and I probably have 18 months to learn as much as I possibly can before I get fired. Maybe I can get 2 years, because he was so enamored that I wanted to come back. His secretary told me later that after he got off the phone with me, he came out and said, somebody wants to come back. Which I never told him I knew. I was scared to death to tell him that. There's no way. But it was nice knowing, so I thought, okay, maybe I can get 2 years in before I get fired. So it's an odd thing, right? So I've got a kid, I'm the only one working, I have a great new job, and I'm gonna get fired. But it was worth the risk. I had HR, I had planning meetings of the board. I'll give you a quick anecdote. The chairman of the board and CEO hated each other's guts. We're in a board meeting, in a planning committee of the board, like strategic planning committee of the board. I'm running the meeting, and they start getting all sideways with each other. So at opposite ends, we were in this old mansion that had been restored on the hospital campus. It was beautiful. Our offices were great. I had a fireplace in my office. It was crazy. So, board chair, CEO. Like the, where it's like two bulls, and you see those bulls slamming their heads. So, CEO can't take it anymore. He says, if you're so effing smart, you can run the hospital. Grabs his giant wad of keys. This guy's the CEO of a very successful company in town, big manufacturing company. Whips him down this long table. So I'm in the middle of the table. So I like everybody else, like a tennis match. We all watch the keys go. He stands up because he's so mad. These are like the influential role models in my life. Up he goes, boom, he's heading towards the door. Well, he's not going to be insulted like that. Up he goes, they're headed towards the door. They both get to the door at the same time. You know, sometimes a door will stick and you just can't get it open. I'm like, they're going to start swinging. They're going to start swinging. I'm like, I'm looking at the CFO. He and I were really tight. I'm like, one of us is going to have to separate the president of the hospital and the board chair. That'll be fun in the paper, because the paper slammed us every minute they could. So the door finally whips open. They go flying out. And I thought, wow, is this real? Is this even really happening? Did I just watch that? Because when I was down at the main part of the system, it was ultra professional. This was just not even. Never on the worst day ever would that have happened. So I went through a year in this bizarre environment, and then another significant thing happened. My father, who dealt with Kuhns disease his whole life, went into the hospital for surgery. Big giant error in the hospital, and he was now gravely ill. We're about to go to this giant system-wide couple days planning retreat for the following fiscal year, and it was just beyond dire. So I'm on a plane, zip down to Florida. I got 2 kids at this point. Zip down to Florida, and I'm in the hospital, hoping maybe there'll be some improvement. So I fly back because I got all this giant scope of responsibility now. We're at the planning retreat at this big Gulf country club for a few days. I get another call, not good. You have to call now. So I go flying out of the retreat, fly down to Florida, and there's no way to save him. So he's on a ventilator that was keeping him alive. It was very sad, very intense. My mom was there. I had one sibling, my sister was there. And I literally had my hand on his chest. They're slowing down the machine because you don't know what's going to happen on the respirator. Sometimes the body fights, sometimes it doesn't. So I had my hand on his chest, and I was trying desperately to get a job in Florida at this point because I needed to be close to them. Big career decision. Now, I'll give you the context why in a minute. So literally his last heartbeat I felt. Hand on the middle of his chest, last one. Very powerful moment. And I knew I needed to be closer to my mom at that point. And I was about to be promoted to have basically all of the ancillary departments in the hospital. So probably 150, 100, 200 employees. Giant move for me because I was only 32 or something, 33. Pretty young to have that much responsibility. But the risk was it wasn't worth staying now because the people part came in again and influenced the career part. And so I took a job at an HCA facility, big giant for-profit hospital company in Florida, so I could be close to them, and that made a big difference, and I really liked HCA. So these couple of powerful markers, this gets us to 2002-ish. Third child born in Florida, which he reminds everybody, I'm the only real Floridian, all of you guys are fakes. Thank you for that. So a lot of powerful changes, and then a whole nother series of career risks kicked in. HCA is a very ultra-competitive company, and they really don't care what happens outside. What they care about is attracting enough highly competitive overachievers, and they print lists and share lists across the company of how every hospital's doing. And it's all ranked 1 to 160. Highest employee satisfaction to worst. Shared with everybody. Highest patient satisfaction, worst to first. Highest earnings, top to bottom. So you have all these crazy leaders desperately trying to get into the top quartile. So think about the energy that the senior leadership of that company has going, with everyone feverishly trying to produce revenue and be successful. It's a wildly successful company. And so I'm slightly competitive, so that sort of matched with my style. Like 100%. And so I was an animal on all that stuff, all over it, and had an opportunity to move to the largest hospital, and largest in HCA speak is revenue. It has nothing to do with beds or people. You didn't care about that. It was all about revenue. And I had an opportunity to go to that hospital, and my colleagues warned me it was a disaster, leadership and employee culture-wise. I was blinded by the opportunity to work at the flagship, best hospital, generating huge money. I think their net revenue at that time was like 55, 56 million net. That's just paid all the bills. Got a stack of 50 million bucks laying in the middle of the table. Pretty sweet. And so I went there, and everyone was right, and I had not listened. So it was time for another career risk. So I thought to myself, okay, it's 8 months. I love the company. This is an absolute disaster. I cannot be affiliated or associated with this horrific leadership culture. So I told the CEO I couldn't stay. Didn't have another job. Married, 3 kids, mortgage, no job. That's cool. No problem. And he says, well what are you doing? You know? And I said, well, you don't hold anybody accountable, and I can't stay. You want me to do things, but you cave every time. So I can't stay. So when the word got to the corporate leadership team in that area, they did a trade. It was very sportsy. So they literally, the person who replaced me at my old hospital that I moved from, we traded. And I went back to the other shop. It's bizarre, right? So I kind of looked at that as, okay, it matters how you've treated people because they were willing and wanted me back. So it was very humbling in the moment that I had that opportunity, because I thought I was going to just be out and really be scrambling. And so about a year after that, I had an opportunity to join my last hospital, which was a specialty children's hospital that Johns Hopkins eventually acquired in the spring of 11. I worked there 3.5 years or so before coming here. Another risk. Didn't know anybody. Standalone hospital. I had lots of opportunities to move in HCA even to a very high level that didn't pan out. Not because I didn't want to, but it just I didn't have the support to make that happen. And so the risk of going to all children's paid off in a big way, because it moved me to an organization that now had several hundred miles of primary service area, and all the different aspects of things that we're experiencing now. For those of you involved with Texas Children's, that's like my old hospital on steroids. And so I got to a point in that organization where it was time for something bigger. And this is, I referenced mission earlier, I'm going to come back to that now. I was ready to make a transition because I had done hospitals for 20 years, and I was crystal clear, like 100% clear what my next 20 were going to be. There was no doubt in my mind. And so I was looking at larger health systems, multiple hospitals, that sort of thing. And I knew Shannon and Chris, and I wanted to talk strategy with Shannon, quite honestly, about who she knew. I knew my network. I knew she had a big network, and I wanted to talk strategy with Shannon about my next move. And so we were talking, and she said, and I've shared this story with some of you, and she said to me, well, what do you think about Atlanta? And I said, well, you know, I don't think Children's of Atlanta's job, the VP of HR job, is open. I haven't heard of any other hospital executive positions open. She's like, no, dummy, coming to work at Kinetics. And I said, Kinetics? I'm not an RPO guy, I'm a hospital guy. She's like, right. We're into the hospital business now. So I had to make a decision. Do I follow the comfortable path, and keep doing what really comfortable, not in a take for granted way, but I'm in my element in a hospital. And I understand medical staff and the roles and all these weird, bizarre political things that happen. And I decided to do two things. I looked at my calendar in the Monday through Friday view. And I just looked, that's what my life is. That's my work life. So it averaged about 30 meetings a week, every single week, no matter what. 30 every week. And I also thought about how mission-driven I had been for so long. I used to do rounds on the units. I'd watch kids on ECMO, which is where their heart and lungs are junk, and the giant tubes in their neck, and the dirty blood's coming out, and the clean blood's going in. There's so much equipment, you can't believe it. And if they would have to be moved somewhere, there was literally 2 docs, 2 respiratory therapists, 3 or 4 nurses, an entourage just to get them from one spot to another. They're so fragile. And we had kids at my last hospital that had a Berlin heart, which is an artificial heart on the outside, waiting for another child to die to be a donor heart, so you can put the real heart back in. So that is so important when you're thinking about the work, for me, the work that I was doing. If I was helping improve the culture and the morale and getting the right people there who could take care of the kids, I was adding value to that mission. And so I started asking myself, after I looked at my god-awful calendar and decided I could do without that, I thought, well, is the mission of kinetics going to be important enough for me to switch this path that I've been on so long